Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Green Left Show. My name is Isaac Nellist, and today I'm going to be talking to Ammar Ali Jan, who is a Pakistani socialist and a member of the General Secretary of the Haqooq-e-Khalq, or People's Rights Party in Pakistan. And we're going to be talking about obviously the tensions between India and Pakistan, which have broke out into an all-out war last week for a few days, with India launching missile strikes against Pakistan. And now there's a bit of a ceasefire deal, so we're talking about what the current situation is. But before we get started, I'd just like to acknowledge that we're recording this interview on stolen land. I'm speaking from the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and sovereignty was never ceded, and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Also, before we get started, if you like this interview and want to hear more about things going on around the world or here in Australia, please head to greenleft.org.au and become a supporter from as little as $5 a month. It's the best way to both get our content and also to support the work that we do. So head to greenleft.org.au/support. So anyway, thanks for joining me, Ammar. I guess to start off, India launched these missile strikes against Pakistan on the 7th of May, and there was fears that this could escalate into an even bigger war, and particularly, the concerns with two nuclear-powered countries. But can you tell us a bit about, what the impact of these strikes were on people in Pakistan and the general situation at the time when these attacks started?
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, Pakistan, there's no appetite for war in Pakistan at the moment. Pakistan has been going through a lot of crises. We have a government that many people believe is not legitimate. There was a stolen elections last year. We also have a lot of internal wars, a lot of internal conflicts, particularly on the peripheries of the country, including the restive provinces of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. Civil liberties is a huge issue. To compound this entire problem, we also have an economic crisis. 40% of the people live below the poverty line. Indebtedness is a huge issue. The IMF basically controls the economy here. In such a situation, war is a terrifying prospect. And despite the fact that Pakistan is so poor, we have one of the strongest militaries in the region. Maybe it's because of that military that we're so poor. Either way, this idea, the notion that there can be a war between two nuclear-armed rivals, it was something that, frankly, not even the Pakistani state had any appetite for. There was constant attempts after the 22nd of April, the attack in Kashmir, constant attempts by various echelons of the Pakistani state to reach out to India, to call for joint investigations, to call on the international community to engage. So there was a lot of hope that there will be negotiations before any kind of violence or adventurism by any of the two sides. However, it was, I think a lot of people in Pakistan underestimated the kind of hysteria that had already been created in India. The ruling party has more legitimacy. It is a right-wing party. It derives its legitimacy from war, violence, particularly against Muslims and belligerents towards Pakistan. And when these strikes started, people were aghast, people were horrified. This happened on the 7th of May, then again on the 8th of May. And then the worst actually happened on the morning of the 10th, when we had Israeli manufactured drones attacking Pakistani cities. So I think that is when fear turned into anger, the public opinion shifted, and then Pakistan retaliated with a barrage of drones and missiles, and eventually led to a ceasefire. Over 30 people got killed in Pakistan. At least one child got killed. And these are extremely dense cities. We're talking about Lahore, which is a city of over 10 million people. And there were Israeli manufactured drones on top of Lahore. So we were on the brink We were on the brink of an absolute catastrophe, but I'm really glad eventually sense prevailed, and we achieved a ceasefire.
Yeah, so let's talk about this ceasefire. So it was announced on May 10, funnily enough, by US President Donald Trump, posting about it on social media. But there are also reports that, the ceasefire has been broken in various ways. There's conflicts along the borders that we're hearing about, but we don't know too much detail. So I guess under this kind of current ceasefire, what's the current situation?
Uh, on the first day, there was a lot of violations, and that's normal in ceasefires. It's very difficult to immediately cease all hostilities. Since then, there's been no reported violation as such, but the hysteria continues, the belligerence continues. This particular ceasefire has also made India extremely angry because Trump announced it before the Indians or the Pakistanis could announce, and I think that's part of Trump's narcissism that he did not wait for the foreign ministers of India and Pakistan to announce. He said he achieved peace, and kind of almost insinuating that he should be nominated for the Nobel Prize. And that's what his mega base was really gunning for on social media, that he's a peacemaker and he's the one who brought them a table. In reality, I believe what happened is India was not expecting the kind of response that Pakistan gave. The aerial battles, which military historians I think will read for a very long time, these were extremely dangerous. This was high tech military warfare that we saw. French fighter jets pitted against Chinese fighter jets. The Rafales versus the J-10s and J-17s. And the French fighter jets that on the Indian side fell, at least two of them, which I think was part of the initial kind of embarrassment that the Indian government had. And then after the drone attack on Pakistan on the 10th, the barrage of drones and missiles from Pakistan, that also kind of shook India, partly because I feel one of the things that the Indian side was hoping is that this will be kind of like an Arab-Israel situation where we'll keep on going in, we'll keep on bombing, there will be minimal resistance, and we'll continue it for 10, 15 days so that we can claim victory at the end. I think the stakes were raised, they miscalculated. The stakes were raised by Pakistan, including the possibility of a nuclear catastrophe. And that kind of got the world community involved. And eventually, the ceasefire was achieved because escalation was not possible after a certain point.
Yeah, so I guess for some people who are watching this might not know some of the kind of context or the broader history of the tension between India and Pakistan. So if you could go into that a little bit and also talk about kind of the role of Kashmir within all this as well.
I think Kashmir is at the heart of it. It is the unfinished business of the partition. It's the only state that never got the right to choose. It got split between an Indian side and a Pakistani side. Both countries have used it for bargaining purposes, for riling up internal nationalist sentiment, for cementing public opinion, for attacking dissenters on both sides. On the Indian side, it's been far more brutal, partly because for a while, many Kashmiris were either pro-separation or pro-Pakistan. And since the 1990s, there's been an insurgency in Kashmir, which India blames on Pakistan. But India has also used tactics which are horrific, including torture and violence and extrajudicial killings. At least over 20,000 people have been killed. Some say over 100,000. It is one of the most militarized zones in the world. And in 2019, India ended Article 370. This was done by the Modi government as part of integrating Kashmir with India. Article 370 basically gives a certain amount of autonomy to Kashmir within the Indian Federation. That autonomy ended, and the idea was that we have now integrated, assimilated Kashmir into India. And that led to a reaction in Kashmir, but was swiftly destroyed and contained through this mass lockdown. Before COVID lockdowns became famous, Kashmiris experienced a mass lockdown in August, September 2019, when people weren't even allowed to leave their homes. Um, Eventually, Modi and his far right government was able to tell the world, including his Indian audiences, that we've actually created normalcy. And one of the reasons why Pahalgam, this attack that happened recently, which was a terrible, terrible attack against tourists in Pahalgam, this tourist spot in Kashmir, uh, it killed at least 25 people. This attack basically it kind of shattered the myth of normalcy that Modi had cultivated. And that is part of the reason why his base wanted retribution. And he was playing to the galleries, playing to his base. And then Pakistan, of course, was responding in kind. However, both countries have to realize that Kashmiris are not objects. Kashmiri people have a proud history. They have a long history, not only of their own statehood, but also a long history of resisting colonialism, of resisting occupation, of resisting militarization. And there will be no peace in South Asia until and unless there is justice for the people of Kashmir. That is the key aspect of any kind of a negotiation moving forward.
Yes, and I guess you've kind of touched on this, but is this the kind of position of the Pakistani left generally towards Kashmir for self-determination?
Absolutely. There's absolute clarity. The UN has a resolution, UN Resolution 47 from 1948, which very clearly states that there should be a plebiscite to determine the future of Kashmir. Kashmir is for Kashmiris. It's not for Pakistan. It's not for India. If the Kashmiris choose any of these two states, that is up to them. If they choose independence, it's up to them. That is the only possible internationalist position, and anybody who doesn't hold that should not claim to be on the left.
Yeah, so I guess you touched on this a bit earlier in terms of the kind of legitimacy of the Pakistani government waning, particularly as you mentioned the election results last year, the kind of stolen election. How are they using this conflict to reassert the legitimacy, and is it working?
Well, they've definitely regained legitimacy to a large extent. I think one of the issues was that a lot of people were observing in this entire 2 weeks that the Pakistani state was showing a lot of restraint. And when your cities are being bombed, of course, then there's not much that any activist can do. There's no protest that's possible. And the analogies with the Arab world were being drawn for the last 2, 3 weeks. And they weren't just being drawn inside Pakistan, they were coming from India. They were coming from the Indian media. They were coming from ministers in India saying we need to reduce Pakistan to Gaza. We need to use the Israeli playbook. We need to do to Pakistan what we did to Syria, to Lebanon, to Yemen. This was, of course, terrifying because the whole world is following what's happening. And when we found that there were drones, literally Israeli drones that fell in the cities of Pakistan, including Lahore, where I'm from, it created a lot of panic. So there is a lot of sympathy. I mean, even on sections of the left, our party has also thanked those who in that perilous moment defended the sovereignty of not only of the country but also defended the people. However, we made it very clear that this was the responsibility of the military. If in the garb of self-defense, the military continues with its oppressive policies, we are under no obligation to remain silent. In fact, what's happened last week is that during this entire conflict, the Supreme Court of Pakistan legalized the trial of civilians in military courts. So we raised a statement on that. And the nature of the Pakistani state is such that it will continue to use this hysteria to benefit those who run the state. So it is our job to fight back. It is our job to organize. Most importantly, We know that this entire economic, political structure, the kind of militarized capitalism that exists in our part of the world, uh, it cannot sustain itself without sacrificing millions and millions of people. Remember, not only 40% of people live in poverty, 25 million children in Pakistan cannot go to school. 80% of the water is contaminated. 40% of people die due to waterborne diseases. The wars that we have to fight are wars against illiteracy, against poverty, against disease, and against authoritarianism. Those are the big wars, and those are wars that even our comrades in India will have to fight. And those are the wars that should unite us, not this mindless bigotry that we're seeing at the moment.
100%. I guess touching on India, obviously there's the the far right uh, Modi government in power, and also large sections of the kind of Indian establishment, and got behind this war drive, which was quite scary to see, to observe from afar at least. So, but there's also been a few sections that are obviously in the left that have gotten behind, were supporting the war drives as well. But there's other sections of the Indian left that have been opposing the war. So has there been attempts to build bridges between with the Indian leftists who are opposing the war? And if so, what's the response been?
Well, I mean, right now, our policy is not to comment on the internal situation of the Indian left. The Indian left has to have that debate within themselves. We also have debates within the Pakistani left at the moment. We have at least three positions on the Pakistani left. One is the position that even if India was attacking, we should not retaliate. That was not our position. Our position was, if we are under attack, we have the right to defend our people. And then there was a third position, which was almost jingoistic, that we should continue the attacks and continue fighting. And that kind of has happened across. You have a left and a right and then a center. And I think part of the problem is that the Pakistani and the Indian left do not have the same kinds of relationship that existed in the past. I feel that those bridges need to be built. Some parties have had an excellent position, others haven't. There were a lot of questions that were raised about certain parties supporting the operation. It was called Operation Sindoor. As you rightly pointed out, some parties supported that operation. But I think it's best not to comment on that, because eventually we will have to work with them. Eventually we will have to create a united paths. And we're not going to create new left parties in India. That's not our job. They can't change the fabric of the left inside Pakistan. We will have to work with those parties, even those parties that have not taken a position for peace. Because in the long run, I think there can be political errors, and these situations are situations of a lot of hysteria, of a lot of fear. But we should remember that in the final analysis, in the long run, who our allies are in India. And despite all the problems, we still have high hopes from our friends in the communist movement. And we believe that we will develop a good working relationship with them in the future.
My final question is, what are the steps that are needed to create, I guess, what you're talking about, a kind of permanent and lasting peace in the region? What are the kind of main challenges, and how do we get there?
Well, there are three issues that are taking place. One is American involvement. America wants to turn India into a hegemon of the region. The recent defense pact signed between Trump and Modi in February, it's a 10-year military strategic partnership. It's part of America's China containment strategy. And they say that our strategic interests are converging. And it's not an anti-Pakistan pact, it's an anti-China pact. But then all of these pacts map onto existing conflicts, existing histories. Trump is doing something similar with Saudi. But then, once Saudi has that kind of power, those kinds of weapons, they can use those toys anywhere to win its own kind of regional dominance. So it's a very dangerous game that America is trying to play in the region, and we have to resist that kind of Western pressure completely. Second is we have to find a just solution for both the issues of Kashmir and terrorism, and they have to be separated. Terrorism is an issue historically. It's again, it's something that's an offshoot of what Pakistan's policy was in the 1980s in the Afghan Jihad when the Soviet Union was in Afghanistan. This was a policy that was completely prepared by Washington. It was the Americans who prepared this entire Afghan Jihad, who armed it, who funded it. The books on jihad were being published in the University of Nebraska. So you can understand the intimate kind of relationship between that jihad and US imperialism. And then since then, the region has had this entire logistical network that has killed 70,000 Pakistanis as well, and has also attacked Indians, has also attacked, has fought in Bosnia and Chechnya and Afghanistan. The entire region has been wrecked by this. So that there has to be a long-term solution for that. But the Kashmir problem existed prior to the 80s. It exists after the end of the war on terror. It will keep existing until and unless there's peace and justice for the people of Kashmir, which is rooted in their right to self-determination. So that has to be the starting point for any resolution of the Kashmir crisis. And the third has to be to remember, look, we are spending our surplus resources on destruction. We've already been denied development in modernity. We entered modernity under colonialism, which was a modernity of loot and plunder and exploitation. And even now, we are wasting our resources, wasting our time in fighting each other. We have to think about development, trade, and as I said earlier, fight the wars that we need to fight, the wars against poverty and illiteracy and disease and extremism and authoritarianism. These are the fights that we have to fight. And eventually, if the far right in India is defeated, this will be a blessing for progressive forces in Pakistan. And if militarism is defeated in Pakistan, it will be a blessing for progressive forces in India. We are connected and we must try to mutually reinforce each other.
Yeah, that's great. Is there any final comments you want to make before we finish up?
Just that I think this is a problem that requires more global attention from the global left. This is a flashpoint. This is a region of over 2 billion people with nuclear weapons and 40% people in poverty. It is a mess. It is showing us what the world can look like. There was a book by Mike Davis called Planet of Slums, but we are moving to a different world. It's basically could be a planet of ruins if this continues. So I think and I think comrades in Australia and comrades elsewhere should not only be reading about it, which I'm sure you're doing, but you've done an excellent job, particularly through Green Left Weekly, of bringing comrades from India and Pakistan together. And I think that is something that the global left can do. There are very few spaces here to talk or meet with Indian comrades. We can't go to India. They can't come to Pakistan. I think we need those spaces. We need those platforms where we can talk to each other and thrash out our differences. It's okay to be, if someone took a bad position, we can work it out. Eventually we will, it's a historical imperative to work together for peace and justice in South Asia.
Incredible. Thanks so much for joining me today, Ammar. It's been really insightful and interesting. If people want to hear more about this from Ammar, he's going to be joining us on a forum on the 30th of May at 6 o'clock in Sydney time via Zoom. And that will be taking place at the Resistance Centre, which is 22 Mountain Street, Ultimo, in New South Wales. But it's also available for anyone to join via Zoom. So you can find out the information about that forum on the Green Left website, especially if you've got any questions that you want to ask or find out a bit more about the developments over the next few weeks. So that's the 30th of May. And then there's also the Ecosocialism conference, which is taking place the September 5th to the 7th in Naarm, Melbourne. And Ammar is going to be one of the featured speakers there as well, I believe in person, which will be great. So make sure you book your tickets, and especially if you're out of Melbourne, start getting your plans together to head to Melbourne for that conference. If you want to find out more, that's at ecosocialism.org.au. And yeah, the tickets are available now, so book them in. And as I said at the start, if you liked this interview or like the work that we do, you can become a supporter at greenleft.org.au/support. plans start from just $5 a month. But yeah, thanks so much, Ammar. Looking forward to seeing you at the forum in May.
I look forward to getting the visa and eventually seeing you, all of you. Yeah, look forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks so much.